Hey, 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 welcome back to an all-new episode of the In Between podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cheney, and I have the lovely pleasure of introducing Kristen from the A Little Bit A Lot podcast on today's episode. Hello, Kristen. Welcome to the In Between.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to say how we met, and it was on the internet, which I guess is like everything nowadays. But I don't even know how. I think you found me or something like that, and I was like, oh, she seems cool. A fellow podcaster, a fellow chick podcaster. Heck yeah!
Yes.
And then, just supporting each other from different points of the world. Because you're in the Midwest, right? Like, you're not
Right,
West Coast.
right.
Yeah, Midwest. And I'm on the East
Michigander.
Coast. Michigander. I love it. Michigander. That's hilarious. I'm going to start referring to anybody known from Michigan as a Michigander. And they're going to be like, who are you? My friend Kristen told me I could say that.
Approved. Stamp approval.
But we are here to say that it is not creepy and it is cool to meet friends on the internet. So,
Yes.
Kristen, welcome to the pod. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, a lot about yourself. Oh, see what I did there?
Yes. Oh my God. I love that my podcast name has become kind of a pun type of moment. That is the intent behind it. Yes. Well, I am, of course, Kristen. Haven't had my podcast for that long. I started it in August of 2023. So your girl is freshly into the podcasting game, but so far I am loving it, especially when it comes to meeting lovely friends like you. The podcasting community has just been so nice, so warm, so welcome, and it's completely opposite to, Stan Twitter, where everyone's kind of, evil and depressing over there. So I really love the change of pace for me, like being able to go into another space where everyone's always talking about mental health, wellness, relatability compared to, drama with other stuff like that has just been like a breath of fresh air. So if anything, I feel like podcasting has quite literally saved my life, saved my mental health, because with my pod, I just always want to talk about positivity, self-acceptance, like I said, mental health and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really what my space of my corner of the internet is really all about. And I feel like we kind of match the same vibe in that way.
Absolutely. I was literally going to say that. I was like, and that's why we become fast friends.
Yes.
And it's so funny, our algorithms probably are very similar because we consume the kind of content that we want to produce, right? And sometimes I'll get I should probably ask this question, let me know if you think this too, but sometimes I'll get in my head, okay, everyone's talking about self-love. Everyone's talking about self-care and mental health and loving ourselves. No one wants to listen to my podcast because, in my world, that's all I consume. And then it's you get someone who comes to you and wow, I didn't think about that. Thank you for letting me feel validated and make me feel seen and feeling not so alone. And it's just it's a constant reminder why our podcasts and our content matter and why we should continue doing it, because we don't talk about this stuff enough as a society and as a group of just, I don't know, women, people, almost said friends. We're all friends. All these strangers, we're just friends.
Right.
But,
I'm glad you mentioned that. Having, oh my God, I just had a brain fart. No, I was going to say, like you said, the impact. Constantly you think, okay, bringing up self-care, everyone else is talking about it, but at the end of the day, it's you can't have too much of a good thing. I feel like when it comes to mental health, adding to the conversation when the conversation already isn't that big, you can't go wrong with that. And I think being able to have me only being in the podcasting game for such a short amount of time, when I did my plus size episode, growing up plus size, talking about the experience and that, the amount of messages that I got where people were not enough people are talking about this subject, and I'm like,
absolutely.
Oh, and I think also what makes us different specifically in our lane is that we kind of have a light touch to it when it comes to the topics. Yes. There are some podcasts out there who are a little bit more serious about it, but I feel like me and you always try to kind of add comedic aspect to it, because that's just who we are. We're quirky, fun people. So we want a good vibe.
Weird. But it's true, and I think that's also what makes it not just approachable from somebody on the outside, but it resonates. Because one, if you're doom and gloom, I'm gonna get uncomfortable. It's I am all for being vulnerable, but there is a way in which you deliver a vulnerable message.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I don't want it to be too dark
or too dense, like methodical and detailed and like medical, and we're like talking like, no, I love reading about that kind of stuff, but I'm not good at listening to that kind of stuff. So like I like the engaging, fun, entertaining approach to it, because I do think like it does resonate, it does hit, and it does make us, likable, and it helps others feel seen, which that's just, I want to say this. You said it's our light touch. It's also the light that we, we're light workers. Like, it's the light we bring. So, okay. Well, I also wanted to say, she may say she's been podcasting since August, which it is the truth. She's not lying, but she's been crushing it. So don't let her novice like, oh, I'm quaint, I'm cute. No, she's crushing it. So, I'm just glad I could book her.
No, you're taking me out right now. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
It's the truth, though. It's the truth, though. And what's funny is we're going to talk about imposter syndrome today, which was a topic that you brought up. And it's like, girl, you're crushing it right now. And what's interesting is most often when we feel imposter syndrome, or we feel like the news is out, everyone knows I'm a fake, or I really shouldn't be here. Like, I'm just faking it till I make it. Most often, no one thinks that. It's all in our head, right? Like, we're crushing it. Like, what I see is different than maybe what you're seeing, because you're looking ahead. You're looking at all the other things that you want to do and accomplish, and check marks you want to check off and mark off and cross off. But that's where it's good to have friends, especially friends in like a shared space like podcasting, content creation, whatever the heck. Maybe you want to be a chef. You want to cook. I don't know. Finding people in that same community to help remind you, like, hey, you are killing it. Boom, bap, boom. So, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's why I'm so thankful for the podcasting community and like friends like you that I've gained, because I can be so hard on myself in that way. And it's like, theoretically, I know that I'm crushing it because the consistency is there. I physically see that I'm posting every day, but I'm really hard on myself. So when I have like moments like that where you're just like, girl, you're doing good, slay. And I'm like, wait, thanks.
I was looking at your link tree earlier and I was like, God dang, I need to get my life together.
Oh!
Woo! I had imposter syndrome earlier, which then I thought was so ironic because that's what we're going to be talking about. So, yeah. Imposter syndrome, you can compare yourself to other people. That fuels imposter syndrome. Productivity guilt, which is something we talked about on your podcast. That's something that feeds imposter syndrome. The flip side of it is like everyone's faking it until they make it. But like we can't quite grasp that. So we just feel like an imposter in whatever we're doing because we don't feel like we deserve to be in that space, whatever that space is.
Right.
So that's where my favorite term, self-love, comes into play, because self-love, like, it gives you that grace and that beat to like appreciate yourself and to try to combat that inner narrative. Yeah. So I want to talk about content creation, podcasting, and where does imposter syndrome show up in your life?
Man, I mean, imposter syndrome just showed up like with doing the podcast, period. I just felt like I didn't deserve to have a little corner of the internet because I'm like, what do I have to offer? Because like we mentioned before, like there are so many people who are in this space. Yeah. What more can I add to it? But then once I started getting the feedback and I got into it, I realized that it's like, no, like I do add a little bit of a different touch to it. You know, a recent review that I got on Apple with the interview that I had with the author Allie, where we talked about borderline personality disorder, was just like, this topic is a deep topic, but the way that Kristen hosted it made it that way, so I didn't want to turn it off. You know, like she kept she kept it fun, and that was like, it really feels good when I get that feedback where I'm like, that was the point, that was the intention that I wanted to make.
Exactly. There's no one like you on the internet. That's what you have to remind yourself.
Exactly. I think that's what's gotten me, you know, through it so far when it comes to my like imposter syndrome, when it comes to content creation, is that I realized the power of the unique perspective that I can bring to stuff. And that's what's really been like the most fulfilling part about this. And I just think in general, like when it comes to creating content, period, I've always been a creative girly, but I just never realized that like this type of lane was something that I was going to enjoy so much. Like the way that I feel literal dread doing what I went to school for is crazy. But like the second that I'm working on pod stuff, I'm like, don't even think about it. Doesn't actually feel like work, which, let's be real, podcasting is work. Yes, but it's like I really enjoy it.
Yeah. It's very rewarding, you know, because you are passionate about it. Like, if you aren't passionate about it, you're not going to succeed at it, because it is a lot of work, a lot of consistency to get to any kind of place of like monetary value, which I'm not even there yet, right?
Right.
It is kind of like the faking it till you make it. Like, you just keep doing it until like finally you're not telling yourself, well, I don't deserve to be here. No, you do deserve to be here. But then what's really great is once you've, like, at least for me, it's like I've combated and managed one imposter syndrome, then something else comes in, and it's like a new thing to be imposter syndromed over, which, yeah, I just made that a verb. I don't think it's a verb, but whatever. So I know I will get immobilized sometimes from my imposter syndrome. Yeah. I will overthink things till I no longer even have a passion or creative direction on like a TikTok video. Like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then like I overthink it so much, and then boom, I don't even post anything. So imposter syndrome does hold you back. So if you are dealing with imposter syndrome, how do you combat that?
I think my thing was just doing it. I feel like that's like such a mediocre answer.
No.
But like that's literally the only way that I get through it. Like, to combat it, I just have to do it. Like, and I think it got to the point where when I was talking to my boyfriend about it, I often find myself like overthinking every little TikTok, every little reel, even when it comes down to like finding like which clips you want to use for promo and stuff. I'm like, I don't know, I second guess it, but my boyfriend always tells me like all content is good content, so I don't really think that you're gonna go wrong here. So that's what I always try to just like remind myself of, is like just put it out there. Like, the longer that I second guess it, the more, like you said, it's just not gonna happen. So it's like, I think that I've always been that way because we have, you know, you've said before, like, you're kind of a go hard or go home type of girly, and I'm that same way, where it's like I reference that all the way dating back to when I taught myself how to swim. I'm going to always and forever tell this story, but it's like, didn't have lessons. It was just a summer where my dad had a swimming pool like right after my parents' divorce, and we were just over there chilling, and I'm like, I want to swim. I just got in and just did it. And I'm like, well, it looks like people kind of just do it like this, right? And it was the same way. And then my mom said it was the same way when I like taught myself potty training. I did the same thing when I learned how to ride a bike. My dad was busy. He looked up and he's like, is that Kristen riding down the street? Because he was taking too long. And I'm like, let's get to it, sweetie. I said I want to learn. So you're over there like working in your workshop. My dad's like such a guy dad. Like, you know what I'm saying? He was always just busy crafting and building something. And I'm like, I just want to learn how to ride a bike. So I just got on and I'm like, I think you kind of just move your legs like this, and just did it. So it's like, that's just always how I've been. So it's the same way that I apply to content creation. If I don't just dive in head first without like head empty, it's not going to happen.
Ooh, I like that. Dive in head first, head empty. So what do you mean by that? Do you mean like going in, just no reservations, just screw it, I'm going in, babe?
Like head literally empty. When I tell you I have no thoughts and I just do it, just post and then move on. Like, it's the only way that I can survive, honestly. Which I know some people might feel like full throttle type of mentality is like not the best, and I know sometimes, you know, that can be like a negative thing, but I just feel like since I've always been this way, like, I've just found a balance. So
no, that's really impressive. I get stuck. I get immobilized. No, I'm serious. Like, and I'm not trying to take away that you don't have imposter syndrome and things like that, but that is like a very great thing to excel at, or to really embody. I'm not gonna say excel, because I'm sure there's times when you don't just lean in completely, but that you're able to shut out the noise. So I have a question for you on this whole topic. We're talking about podcasting and it being a passion, so I'm sure that kind of helps. Do you find imposter syndrome showing up anywhere else in your life?
It's with work. It's literally with work, because I've been dealing with this, especially within this last week or so, because with my job, I have to get CEUs, which if people listening don't know, there's like continuing education credits. So in order for me to keep my certification, I have to get like up to 40 every other year or something like that, and I submit it. So in order to earn those, I can do like magazines, do a little quiz, and then submit those, and then I get like a credit. But a lot of times the way I'm able to just knock them out is by doing webinars, and because with the webinars they'll be all day long, and then you get like 12. So with that, I have been feeling the imposter syndrome very heavy this week, because with my career, it's something that I kind of just did basically for money, which I know is not always the best thing, but the reality is not everyone's going to work in the field that they love. Sometimes you gotta just do what you gotta do to survive. My mom told me, hey, I think you should go to school for, something in the health field. My entire family comes from a line of nurses. My great-grandmother was a nurse. My grandmother's a nurse, and my mom is a CNA. Coincidentally, my boyfriend's also a CNA now. So also my cousin is a nurse too. So pretty much I come from a nurse/CNA heavy household. Yeah. And I felt the pressure when it came to graduating school. So when I came to college, I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't have it in me to be a nurse. Don't want to touch people. Don't want to be around people. What do I do? And then that's how I was able to come up with like medical coding, because I'm able to kind of just, code what the doctors and the nurses are doing, bill it to the insurance, and that way I don't have to actually see anybody. Love it. So that's what I have to get the continuing education credits for. So even though I don't love my job, it's, basically reading all day, you got to get the credits. So when we do the webinars, it was from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m.
Oh, miserable.
And oh my God. And it was so long. And a lot of times, the girls, they'll be like, oh, do you have any questions? And everyone's just firing off in the chat. Oh, what about this when we code this? What about this when we do this? And I'm should I be asking these questions? Maybe I should be asking more. Maybe I should care more. Maybe I should, want to dive in more. And I always find myself comparing myself to others when it comes to these webinars, because it's half the time I don't know what's going on. They send us these books in the mail. They're literally 1,000 pages long. Oh, God, and then we're supposed to go through the books as they're going through the webinar. And I have no clue. It's I kind of know how to do the bare minimum of my job. And then everything else, when it gets a little bit too intricate, I'm ooh, don't know how to do that. So I literally always feel imposter syndrome when it comes to my actual 9 to 5. Matter of fact, I also felt so much imposter syndrome because I'm maybe I'm actually not meant to be in my job, because I technically failed the test the first time I took it to get certified, because I was so freaking nervous that my stomach was upset.
It sounds like so much information.
Yes, my stomach got upset because I was nervous. So then half the time I wasn't even in the testing room, and then once we come back,
bless your heart.
We come back and she's like, time's up. I still had 20 questions left, Elizabeth. So in the end, I wasn't even able to finish the test. Of course, I didn't pass. So then I'm maybe it's not meant to be, which I took it the second time, passed. But I think that alone made me feel for the rest of my career that maybe I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But my coworkers always give me the encouragement to be like, girl, you're doing fine. And I think that's just how I've always kind of been, where it's yeah, I dive in, right? But then along the way, I'm kind of just was this a good idea? Should I just dove in?
I'm floating with you. I'm
Yeah, so that's literally what I've been dealing with this week. It's every time we do the webinars and I see how much more people know in my field and what good coders they are, I can't help but compare.
That makes sense. But I also feel there's a couple of things at play here. One, there's the pressure of your family. You feel you kind of got put into a career path that maybe you weren't 100% in on, or maybe you weren't sure, but you felt pressure anyway. Then I'm just going to go out and say, I don't know who would do well with a 6, 7, 8 hour webinar to go over 1,000-page book.
It's so bad. And then they only give us breaks every 2 hours. We get a break every 2 hour, 45-minute lunch. And it's this could have been just a PowerPoint. She's literally reading us what we can already have read in the books. I don't really understand. I hate meetings like that.
Yeah. I was going to say, with that imposter syndrome, you could think of a couple things, but one that came to my mind was, if it's related to your job, especially in your sense where you're like, I just have never felt connected to this, so that makes it worse.
Yeah,
like I don't feel like, and yes, not everyone's gonna have a dream job or a passion job, but I also think that everyone should be happy in what they're doing. And you know, I feel like if you kind of introspect a little bit and think about like, well, what don't I like about this? Well, what would bring me joy? Right. And go from there. So how the in-between was born was from me asking the question, how do I create my dream job? And at the time, it wasn't quite a podcast, but it was like I wanted to answer the question, how do I get from A to B, whatever A to B is. And in this moment, it was money. How do I make more money? Then that evolved to the In-Between podcast, because I like talking. I want to be like, my dream job is to be a TV show host. So then it just evolved from that. So who knows, maybe a little bit, a lot is your dream job. Maybe being a content girly and being like that one-stop shop, like a person on the interwebs, if you will, that people go to feel good, to be entertained, to giggle, to talk about current shit, like pop culture, whatever, but also get that dose of love and self-respect. That might be your dream job. So imposter syndrome is like anxiety, it's ADHD, but it can also be a thing that moves the lever. Like if you, like, because like to me, like the examples you gave, like the imposter syndrome with the podcast is different, and I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I feel like that is a different type of imposter syndrome than what you're describing. But like the medical coding thing is like, that has so much more nuance. And not that there's not nuance to the other one, but it's different, right? Yeah. So it's giving yourself grace and then thinking about, where is this coming from? Like why? Not just where, but like what's sourcing it? What's fueling it? Like it's coming from me, sure, but like why? And then kind of going and exploring it from that.
Yeah, that is the true tea. I do want this to be my full-time job. I think that, you know, anyone who goes into this, like once you find out that you do like it, it's up from there, and you're just like, yeah, I want to do this for a living. So I think that's why I've been so consistent with it, because it's like, it is true. Like my job keeps me content, and the fact that like, it's a well-paying job, obviously, because it's in the health field. And at the end of the day, it's like my boyfriend's always like, but you don't have that much to complain about. Like you literally are able to be at home all day. I don't have to be on the phones, don't have to interact with patients. Like there's so many different ways that since I went into this field that I've been able to kind of just like really truly have like a relaxed schedule. I can leave anytime I need to leave, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, no matter what advantages the career comes with, if you're just not fully in it, it's never gonna feel like I'm fully happy.
No. And then that also fuels imposter syndrome, that you're not doing enough, you're not making the most of your life, you're behind. Like there's just like so many negative, intrusive thoughts that come from that. Right. So how we get through that is we love ourselves, we give ourselves grace, and we just say, there's no need for you, imposter syndrome, and then remind yourself that everybody is faking until they make it. Like I am certain, like I'm allegedly a grown-up. On paper, I am over the age of 18.
I feel the same.
But I still feel very much like a child, and I feel very much like I'm just waiting for my mother to come in and reprimand me for something, you know? Like, yeah. Right? And it's just, we have imposter syndrome over like the silliest shit, but like, I don't know if it's just a millennial thing. I don't know if it's the social media. I'm sure it's all of that. It all feeds into it, because like we're comparing ourselves, and like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like, when did I first feel imposter syndrome? And it's like probably when I graduated college and I was comparing myself to every single person out there and not thinking about where they came from or what privileges or not privileges they would have had. And I'm just like, but I'm not there and I'm not good enough. And it's like, there's so many more layers to that. So I feel like another way to like combat imposter syndrome is just continually reminding yourself, everyone is faking until they make it. Like, I am sure, like, how many people are on your webinars normally, like your work webinars?
Man, there's like over 100 people in there.
Guarantee like half of them are just sitting there going, what the fuck?
No, yeah, because I thought the same thing too, because I had my one coworker, like before I got to really know her, I just thought that she was just like so intimidating. And then once we got to really know each other, I'm just like, oh no, like she's an anxious girly too. And then once I really got to know, I'm like, oh, she also doesn't really know much of what's going on either. So
I hope that made you feel better.
It did. It really did. Because then it's like both of us are kind of just like, well, I don't know. And then we kind of like refer to my other coworker. She's almost like our mom. And we're like, we just got to wait for her to answer because we don't know. And then it's It's like half the people in our team are like coming to us for answers, and it's like, dude, I know I've been doing this since 2020, but I still don't know what's going on. Like, don't come to me. I don't want to be responsible for saying yes or no or helping you with anything.
Well, I'll be fair. The healthcare industry is like hella crazy. I work in healthcare as well. I work in marketing and communications. And
oh, that's tough too. Our marketing team is always going through the gags. Like, geez Louise.
If I was to stay in this career my whole life, I still don't think I learn everything. Because there's, like, I mean, it's like, honestly, even state by state differences. It's wild. It is.
When it comes to health, you never realize how many differences there are state by state. Like, especially even when it comes to, like, insurance by insurance, we could have a whole episode soapbox on American healthcare. I would love that. It would be a very spicy episode, I'm sure. Oh my gosh.
It would be very spicy.
Yeah.
So speaking of imposter syndrome, sometimes that can also lead to like burnout. And I mean, not just imposter syndrome leads to that, but like anxiety, lots of things can lead to burnout. So with you also having a podcast and working 9 to 5 like myself, I always like to ask, or I'm curious to know, how do you juggle it all? How do you juggle the 9 to 5 and the 5 to 9? How do you juggle so you don't get burnout? Or if you do find yourself getting burnout, how do you like reset?
Man, I was like, it's funny that you talk about this, because I recently realized that I was kind of dealing with burnout a little bit with the pod. And I think that's why I allowed myself to take a break. I just actually, after this week, came back for season 2.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Season 2 launch.
Right. So I just got back from my break, and I was like really contemplating that too. Like I had a lot of anxiety, because a lot of the gurus are always telling you like, be consistent, post multiple times a day. And it fills me with so much anxiety, because everyone's telling you that you should be doing this, that, and the other. And then if you don't, then you're going to lose opportunities. You're going to lose followers. What if people lose interest in me? And I think that's what made me so nervous about it. But I was feeling a little bit of burnout too, because at the end of the day, like when you're that consistent, it does take a lot out of you mentally, because you're constantly thinking. Even though, like I said, I love doing the pod, either way, your brain is being used and your brain gets tired. So yes. I was a little bit tired, and that's why I decided to take the break that I took. And I was really hesitant about the length of the break, and I ended up being gone for about 3 weeks, which I know like typically people aren't really gone for that long for pods, but I was like, skip it. I gotta do what I gotta do, because I'm really getting tired of posting every day. And just even thinking about like ideas every week. It's like, it is a lot.
As a solo podcaster, especially.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I always think about. Like, I'm like, oh man, having a co-host would be nice. But at the same time, like there's so much freedom and liberation with it being a solo at the same time. Yep. So I think one thing that just helped me with preventing the burnout was allowing myself to take that break, regardless of what people are saying. In the end, it was fine. I still had listeners while I was gone, was still gaining followers. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's fine. So it's like, I'm still navigating that to this day, Elizabeth, but we're trying.
The whole time you're saying this, I just kept thinking like, wow, are you in my head? Because I think about that all the time. And you post way more consistently than I do. I mean, I'm finally getting back on my horse, so to speak, since losing Luna. But the consistency, it's so hard. And I have started to give myself more breaks when I need it. Because like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to burn myself out trying to do the job, my regular job, and then doing this, and then I'm trying to build this website and do these things for the person I hired. And okay, what's more important? Me putting out another episode stretched too thin, or taking the beat, taking the break, and then also working on the website, which long-term goals, that's going to help push it, grow it, everything like that. So it's important to recognize that, but it doesn't mean it takes it away, because I think about that all the time. Like, oh, am I relevant? Like, if my story's not live. And so I kind of freed myself from that mentality or that mindset last year, but I've kind of gotten back into it, because I do want to grow. That this year's my big focus is growth, and you do need to be like consistent and have your story live and all this. So I just want you to know, like, this is going to be a work in progress for myself as well. So I may have to come, like, ask you for some help. Be like, Kristen, I'm overwhelmed. How do I take a beat? Tell me what to do.
Yeah. Like, taking a beat for yourself is, like, not wrong. And I think that because I have that perfectionism in me, that I felt like it was not okay to do that. But, after thinking about it for a while, I'm just like, it's okay. And like you said, I would rather have my audience be able to see me at 100% and see that I'm actually engaged and like and to win it rather than like feeling burnt out. And I think as far as like juggling like the whole 9 to 5 situation, I think I just had to allow myself to really just focus on work, because at the end of the day, like, that's going to be our priority. That's what's paying the bills. So work is work. And then during my lunch break, that's when I take a little bit of time to focus on the pod. But I also got to the point where I was like, hey, maybe every lunch break shouldn't be filled with pod stuff. So now I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm just like still trying to find a balance of it. So maybe a couple of times a week, I'll take my lunch hour to work on the pod stuff. And then the other few days a week, then I just like chill out, take a work nap. Love that during my my lunch, as the perks of working from home.
Yeah,
take a nap during your lunch or go get a bite to eat. Sometimes I go in the living room, play my Switch for a while during that break.
So I love the Switch.
Be able to, yes, have that balance. And like I mentioned on my show, getting into reading, that has helped me with the balance of it all too.
So making time for those things that your interests in hobbies that you enjoy that are also separate from the pod. Because like we can say the podcasting is a hobby, even though it is like our goal, like our career goals and what we want to do. But like, I want to keep a professional mindset with it because it's easy to get burnt out with it. Also, side note, people who just podcast for fun, I'm like, you just enjoy doing like a full-time job for like... I mean, that's good for you, but like, yeah, it's definitely a labor of love.
Yeah, sure. It definitely is. I think that's a good point. Like, it is technically our hobby now, but we want it to be more. So I think if we start treating it the way that it needs to be treated, where it's kind of basically job number 2, we got to keep things separate. So it's like, it's kind of the hobby-ish / job, but the real hobbies, they need their own time too.
Because that's when you... take a beat, you reset, like your brain takes a break. Even if you're reading, ACOTAR, some fantasy romance novels. I was for you all listening, I was trying to sell Kristen ACOTAR on her podcast earlier. Yeah, I was like, you're a fantasy girly, you need to read ACOTAR, ma'am.
I can't wait. Ma'am. Yes.
I've gotten so many people to read that series, I'm telling you. But yes, point being, it's important to keep your hobbies, interests, things like that separate, because you need that brain break. You need that space. So that is a good reminder.
Right.
Yeah, no, I still struggle. I still struggle. I always struggle with imposter syndrome, but it has gotten easier. Because we were talking earlier about like the chicks that I podcast swapped with over the weekend. That's a podcast you want to collaborate with. And I was like, oh my God, they're so great. You just got to reach out to them. You just lean in and reach out to them. So see, it's easier when I tell you things you're imposter syndromed over. Oh, I just did a verb again. And it's easier when you tell me things that I'm imposter syndromed over. That's just how the world works. It's easier when I get it from somebody else. And it's easier when I'm telling somebody else the advice.
Yeah, that's for sure. But like to your point, when it comes to the podcasting world, like, that imposter syndrome is going to kick in a little bit, because when it comes to those big creators, you're just like, ooh. But I just always have to remind myself that like everybody started from somewhere. Exactly. This is my starter from somewhere. Exactly. So I just got to lean into that.
And there's a space for all of us, because like we already said, like we bring it in, like we each have an individual value that we bring to our podcast, to our content, to the internet. So there is room for you, me, and 50,000 others. I truly believe it, because here's the other thing: this shit's not easy, so people are gonna give up. So there's that.
No, literally, because when I first started, I was like in this like little podcasting like group chat, and it's like literally none of the people in there are even still doing their show. I'm literally the only one here, like 5-6 months, like still pushing through, and I'm like, man, hell
yeah, that's amazing. Way to go, Kristen. Because it's hard. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Wait, go, girlfriend. I was gonna ask, are you finding the more you do your pod and the consistency with it, like, do you find that it's helping imposter syndrome a little bit, or is it like I said earlier, like it's manifesting in different ways? Like, okay, cool, I've overcome this one, but now it's a new one. It's like levels to it.
No, it's definitely helping, because I feel like before I started the pod, I was like so scared of being perceived, and especially when it came to like people I knew, like something felt so embarrassing about like people that grew up with me seeing the type of person that I am now, and hearing like my innermost thoughts about like my anxiety journey, growing up plus size, different things like that. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm just always so convinced that somebody's going to use that against me. When in reality, like, it's not that deep. And I've been seeing like different TikToks that have really been helping me when it comes to imposter syndrome of it all, when it comes to being perceived, where they always remind me that like social media is not for your friends. It's for the people that are out there who aren't meant to be a part of your audience.
Yeah.
So it just got to the point where I don't even like share it on my personal page anymore or anything like that as much, because it's just like nobody from my hometown needs to see this. So,
and don't need to feed your imposter syndrome with it, right?
Exactly. But yeah, that was one big thing that I was just like so scared of being seen. And I think that, you know, not to get too deep, but I think that comes from like childhood trauma, because a lot of times, like, you know, growing up, my grandma, if you listen to my podcast, you'll learn that, like, you know, she's not always been the nicest or the gentlest when it comes to encouragement and things like that. And she would always just like, anytime I'm frustrated or upset or kind of just really having like any human emotion, she would just be like, well, you're too young. You don't know nothing. You don't know anything about being, you know, annoyed. Why are you always saying you're upset about something? You know, wait until you get into the real world. And when you're constantly hearing that as a child, that invalidates your feelings. So then when you grow up and you have those feelings, then you feel like I'm not allowed to take up space. And then that can transfer to taking up space on the internet. Because then she's always telling me like, oh, you're just young, you don't know nothing. So then I'm convinced that I don't know anything. So then what do I have to offer?
Right. And also, not just that, like, not what I don't offer, but you don't trust yourself in a way. Like, you don't trust, like, how you feel.
Issue. Yes. Like, trusting myself has been such an issue for me. Like, to this day, I feel like I still have to always, like, go with my gut when it comes to things. And I always found myself like asking my sister, like, well, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should do that? And it got to the point where she was annoyed, like, girl, I don't know. It's your decision. It's your life. And I've had to definitely work on that in therapy, for sure, my therapist, about like trusting yourself. And it got to the point where even I made a podcast episode about it, how to trust yourself, how to trust your instinct, and leaning into that, because that was just something that I was taught like not to do, because I'm like, oh, I guess I know nothing. I haven't experienced life enough. But it's like, no, I've actually been through some hard things. No, you know, including someone telling me those things, and that's trauma. I've gotten past that. So it's like, I deserve to take up that space.
1000%. And not just somebody who told you those things, but somebody of significant value. Yeah. Like, if you think about societal relationships and things like that, like a grandmother, grandfather, father, mother, like those roles, like, society speaking, like, they hold weight, they hold value. So why would you question that? Like, why would you question yourself? Of course it's feeding that mindset, and well, I guess this is how I am, this is who I am. So, and I guarantee that also feeds your imposter syndrome, because like imposter syndrome is self-doubt. Like, it is a complete lack in faith that you can accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do. So thank you for sharing that vulnerability on the in-between. Yeah, that childhood trauma, that'll do it to you. I was just thinking, like, my grandma wasn't that mean, but looking back on my childhood and thinking about certain things, like how because like my whole thing has been like, all right, I know I've been an anxious Nelly my whole life. So I've been trying to like replay, like, growing up, what were signs, what were things? And I remember being told I was hyper a lot. And then I was like, and I'm like, oh, so that was anxiety. That's ADHD. Then also my Nana would tell me things like, you're going to get kidnapped if you leave me at the store. So my Nana, like...
Elizabeth, my mom was the same way. The way that she put paralyzing fear into me, that I was going to be named Samantha tomorrow if I didn't stay close to her at every single second.
I sheltered myself. Like, literally. Yeah. Like, I went to college and it was a culture shock. I was like, wow.
No, same. I was literally convinced that anytime I was in that school parking lot, someone was going to murder me.
Yes. And like walking by myself, constantly looking behind my shoulder like a psycho.
Don't let me take a night class. I'm like,
hell no. No.
My night classes gave me the most anxiety. Everyone in the building is gone, so who's gonna see if I get kidnapped?
You're like just walking to class with like a rape whistle, like...
No, seriously. Like, it was bad. Yeah.
Well, and all of that, like, affects us. Like, it feeds self-doubt, it feeds fear, it feeds paranoia, it feeds distrust. It just feeds this whole, like, idea that, like, it is you against everybody and the world, and everyone's out to get you. So not surprising that it manifested in all the different ways that it has as you've gotten older. But it's also super beautiful and amazing that you are working on it in therapy. Also, side note, I fucking love therapy. I just love therapy.
Same. I was so scared of it because my very first therapist, after my parents got a divorce, my mom was like, hey, maybe you guys should talk to somebody. And she put us with the same therapist. So me and my sister both had the same one. That wasn't a good idea, but hey, at least the effort was there. And my first therapist would fall asleep on me, so I didn't have the best relationship with therapy at first.
Bad. That's like the stereotypical like bad version of therapy, like you see in movies.
Right, like she was this older lady, and it was just, I'm like, is she over there sleeping, or her eyes just really low? And then my second therapist,
oh my God,
because I have like this high energy type of personality, it's hard to see that like I may be struggling, because a lot of times like I deal with my trauma by kind of laughing about it. I have that very like dark humor type of energy. So you may not see that I'm struggling because I seem like I'm fine, but that's just because I have high functioning anxiety. So she never really cared to like look beyond that. Mm-hmm. And to her, since I wasn't like opening up enough, she was just like, well, I don't really think you need therapy. And I'm like, girl, I'm actually unwell, but you just can't tell. So it was rocky at first, but once, I had enough was enough, I found the right one for me, but it took time, man.
It does. And I want to say thank you for sharing that story, because I know a lot of people who have had similar experiences where like the first therapist just wasn't good. And if you already have like any kind of reservations against therapy and you have that experience, oh hell yeah, it's gonna put a super sour taste in your mouth. Right. So I'm glad that you kept up with it and not just once but twice. Third time's a charm, right? So there's that. But I hate that happens, but sometimes you do have to find the right therapist. So, and I commend you for not being okay, but having enough self-awareness to be like, wait, I know you're the professional, but like I'm not okay. Like, I know I'm not okay. Maybe this is just us and I need to find somebody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's really commendable, and like that's really impressive. So it's like we're aware of our problems, but we still got them.
Right. Oh my God. Being self-aware is like, people don't talk about how like it can be a little bit debilitating at the same time now.
I literally was telling my husband that the other day. I was like, God, it is a blessing and a curse to be as self-aware as I am. Like, it's a double-edged sword.
Seriously, it is, but we're trying.
You know who needs some self-awareness? Nicki Minaj.
Oh my God. It's been taking me out. It's been a rough week. I mean, you literally have gone to my podcast and seen that I have had entire Pink Friday 2 album review. I have been a Barb since first mixtape era. Since she first got signed to Young Money, back when she was wearing the bangs. So
the bangs, yes.
It's hard. It's been hard out here.
For those listening who are like, how do we just transition from like anxiety and mental health to Nicki Minaj? Well, first off, love pop culture, so does Kristen. And I know Kristen was a Nicki Minaj fan. And for anyone who maybe hasn't looked at any social media today or the weekend, Megan Thee Stallion made a track last week, and basically one little line Nicki Minaj assumed was about her, which maybe it could be, but maybe it's not. Because honestly, what I thought about Kristen with it was like, well, her name's Megan. Maybe she's just saying Megan's Law because she's Megan. But you need to go Google the tea to see the full tea. But long story long, Megan Thee Stallion came out with a song. There was a line that may or may not have been about Miss Minaj. And Miss Minaj then proceeded to spend the entire weekend tweeting the hell out of it, like in a crazy way. And then came out with a quote unquote diss track, which, mind you, she just dropped a new album not even that long ago. And the diss track is literally written by a 4-year-old. So
yeah,
it's bad.
No, yeah, it's been really rough. And I think that a lot of times on TikTok, people have been saying like there's a difference between like a real Barb and a delusional Barb. And it's like, I refuse to be a delusional Barb. Like, when it comes to pop culture, I am a stan girl down. Like, I just love being a fan of someone. And when I'm a fan of you, like, I'm going to go hard, listen to all your stuff, support you all the way through. I love going to concerts. Like, that's my thing. Instead of going out to the club, going to parties and stuff, since I'm basically an introvert, my way of communicating with the world is by going to a concert so we can have a unified experience and being around people that I know for a fact like what I like. So I take it very seriously, and it's been very difficult because it's like you want to be able to support the artists that you love while also being able to hold them accountable. So I feel like I always try to look at it from a realistic lens. Yeah. Like, my problem with the whole Nicki Minaj situation is the fact that I understand Megan said what she said, but technically I truly think that the real issue here is the fact that Nicki Minaj is kind of just more upset about like a bigger issue, which is that she may or may not be upset about the fact that Megan has 3 Grammys and she doesn't. I think that's the true tea here. Yeah. I think that's the true tea.
She seems like a mean girl, a little bit. Like, the way she's acting is mean.
Yeah, and I think it's just displaced anger. A lot of times that I've really tried to, like, sit down and really think about it and be, like, a rational Barb. And I truly think that her issue is the fact that she thinks that it may be seeming like it's unfair that so many other people are getting opportunities and she doesn't feel like she's getting the same opportunities. Because right before we had Pink Friday 2, she just now got her first Vogue cover. But it's like, how is it that Nicki Minaj has been in the game for so long and she's just now being on the cover of Vogue? We also had another issue where she had her beef with Travis Scott. The beef with Travis Scott wasn't even really about Travis Scott. It was the fact that I think he was allegedly getting merch and it was counting towards album sales. And she was like, hey, merch is merch. Album sales are album sales. How does that count? So I think the problem is that whoever she beefs with, she's really kind of just upset about the rules that are in place. But then when she does it, it's a problem. And then in the end, it just ends up being like the face of the issue. They're like the beef, when in reality, it's like her issue is with the gatekeepers of the music industry, not really Lotto or Megan Thee Stallion or Travis Scott. She has a problem with the way things are set up. Because, like, they also recently did this thing where, like, they were doing, I think Lil Nas X did it too, and Cardi B, where they're like, hey, if you send a screenshot of your proof that you pre-ordered the thing, then you can get, like, money on Cash App or something like that. So then when Nicki tried to do it, Billboard was like, hey, that doesn't count. And now it's like, oh, she seems like she's upset at Cardi B. Oh, she seems like she's upset at Lil Nas. Oh, she seems like she's upset at Lotto. But she's just using these people as an example to be like, oh, you let this, and this person do it, but I can't do it. You gave, like, Megan Thee Stallion a Grammy, but I can't get a Grammy. I think that's really where the anger lies.
That's a really fair assessment, actually. So rather than she's going to all the individuals, like the artists, which are her peers in a sense, it's like, why don't you take the battle to where it needs to go? And not that I'm a Swiftie, but isn't that what she did with the whole streaming industry? Like, didn't Taylor Swift kind of go up against, like, the streaming for some of, like, I don't remember all the details about it, but I think it was Apple Music. Like, she did something where, and I think it was to give, like, musicians a piece of the pie or something like that. So it's like, rather than just bitching at your peers, like, why don't you try and, like, actually... But maybe she's not self-aware. Maybe that's what she's thinking.
And I think that's the problem here. It's like a lot of the times when Nicki goes on these rants, I can kind of see that there's always a little bit of truth into what she's saying, but then it's like her delivery gets thrown off. We start getting personal. Then it's like that's when it goes into kind of like a mentally unwell standpoint where it's like, okay, I understand you're upset about the Megan thing, but do we necessarily need to be on live for 3 days straight? Do we necessarily need to like over 150 tweets shading Megan? That's where it's like, okay, I'm kind of concerned about your mental health now. You know, like to Onika Tanya Mirage, the person, not Nicki Minaj, but the person. And that's why I said on my Instagram story, like, has she eaten? Is she well? You know, has she been able to spend time with her child? She's been on live, on and off all weekend. That is too much time spent where she could just be, you know, pulling a Beyonce and just being like, you know what, I'm above it. But to her point, oh, I wasn't raised like Beyonce. I didn't have the same type of resources, so I'm going to try to defend myself. But it's like, it's always a catch-22. It's like, I get what she's trying to say, but sometimes the delivery is just, it gets crazy and she gets lost in the sauce.
Yeah. And it just comes off mean. Like, it just, like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like, okay, like, you're a grown-ass woman. Like, calm down.
Right. And that's why it's like, as a Barb, I just wish that, you know, ultimately, like, I want it to be about the music. But then it's like, she drops the diss track and it's like, ugh, one and want this.
Yeah. But I will say the tea is interesting. The tea is hot.
Yeah.
The tea is serving. Because I know that song that Megan Thee Stallion put out had like so many people that, well, I don't think she said them by name, but like there was lots of references to different people. But
right, it wasn't just Nicki that got the smoke, man. Everybody was getting it, and now
everyone just kind of hates on her after the whole shooting thing.
Right?
Yeah,
it's just like,
I
dang.
don't get that. I don't get the hate for her for that.
Which a lot of people are saying, like, to her point, like, especially when it comes to the Tory Lanez case and like the shooting in itself, it's like everyone's so upset, like, you sent him to jail, but it's like the case was about this, what was it, the state versus Tory, because the real issue was, why the heck did he have a gun when he's a Canadian? She was just a witness.
And no one cares about the details. They just care about the raps. That's all they care. What clout and art are we gonna get from this? Like,
no,
yeah.
For real. And that's why Megan said in her new song, she was like, if y'all want to talk to him so bad, download JPay, write him in prison. I don't know what you want me to do, is beyond me. She cleared him with that.
I love her though. I really
do. Yeah, I
live
live for her. And I think that's one thing that I said on my TikTok, like, it just hurts me because it's like, I'm a fan of everyone. Cardi B, Nicki, Lotto, Ice Spice, Doja Cat. Like, I want everyone to be united hand in hand. I said, I want everyone to look more unified than the Disney Channel Friends for Change campaign. I'm not sure if you remember that. The era where you had
memory unlocked right there. They're all singing. Yes. Demi Lovato, the Jonas Brothers, Ali and AJ.
Yes. Like, that would be my version. Like, I said, that's what I want for America, for us to be united. It's like, I feel like I was campaigning for presidency. Like, that would be my first, like, motion that I would set, that the girlies would be forced to make up, hold hands, and that rap beef wouldn't, you know, be a thing. But I know that human conflict is, like, natural, but, like, man, it's just hard out here when you stand everybody.
Yeah. But also, like, to your point, what you're trying to say, it still would have been different if Nicki would have come out and, like, said all the things that she is projecting for. So rather than dissing the individual, it's like, screw this. Like, why don't I have a Grammy? Screw this. Like, the Billboard thing. Like, you're saying that doesn't count now. If we counted for all of them. Screw this. Like, his merch sales, like, call out the industry, you know? Use your fame. Because, like, if she's getting screwed, you don't think the little guy isn't? For sure they are.
And so, if you changed it in that perspective, then she could be like the leader forward for all of, you know, the other people who need a voice to make those changes for things. But it just ends up being like this whole screwed up thing. I'm also surprised that Cardi B hasn't spoken on it.
I know.
I'm waiting for her to enter the chat, man.
I know. Because normally she be talking. She's not quiet. So yeah, I am.
She'll like be so quick to like tweet a meme of like someone looking to the side and you're like, ooh, Cardi what?
Like the hermit with the T, like the hermit, the frog with the T. And he's
yeah. And I just truly think that all of this like started because Megan chose to have that song with Cardi B. They did WAP, and then Nicki was like, ooh, maybe something else happened behind the scenes, but I feel like maybe that was the problem. Like, with Nicki, if you're going to be on her side, she doesn't really want you working with other people she doesn't like, which I think kind of sucks from a business standpoint, where it's like, man, like, at the end of the day, business is business. I should be allowed to make a song with someone even if you don't like them, and we could still be friends. But
plus she like hates everybody, so
yeah, it's like, it's it's difficult. And I feel like I always try to think about it from like a rational Barb standpoint, where it's like, I still want to be here for the music. I already bought my tickets for the Pink Friday too. What am I gonna do? Resell them? Like, I still want to go.
Maybe she'll hear this episode and then she's gonna awaken into self-awareness and be like, you know what, Kristen and Elizabeth were right. I just need to go shut down the music industry and give all my fellow females a hug.
Yeah, like, that's what I would want. Like, I had such high hopes for this tour. Like, in a perfect world, her and Lotto would have been able to go on the tour together. She could have been an opening act. That would have been a great choice. Like, oh man,
is she not cool with Lotto either?
No.
Oh jeez.
And I think that was over the Grammys too, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is she gonna hate her for that? Like, that, like, she doesn't pick that.
I don't know. Even Lotto like leaked a phone call of her trying to talk to Nicki and ration with her, and she's like, "What is exactly the problem?" And Nicki's like not really giving her a clear answer. So then I think she just ends up getting so lost in it, where it's like, a displaced anger type of moment. So it's like,
No,
Barbs,
right.
don't cancel me if you guys are listening to this. I'm here for Nicki. I'm here for everybody. I just want to be able to just have like it not get too crazy, right?
Yeah.
Rap beef can stay rap beef, but once it comes to we're on live for 3 days straight, that's a little bit too much.
Yes, and we need to support each other. Don't let them win by putting us against each other. We actually should be together and go after them, because that's really what needs to happen.
Right. Like,
Yeah,
there's already
putting
so
us
much
against
going
each other
on
is-
with
yeah.
like the men in the industry. Like, we need more of that female moment, because at one point all we did have was Nicki Minaj, like
Yeah.
quite literally. You know,
And I
she
feel
was
like
the
that's
only
what
one we
she's still
had.
holding on to in a way. But
Yeah.
even still, and we don't have to get too much into this, but I was going to say Little Kim before her and so many others before her. I mean, didn't she have beef with Little Kim when she first
Yeah.
kind of came on the scene? And it's like, Little Kim was here long before you. So, I don't know.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Easy
it really
crazy.
is. I have to remind myself at the end of the day, we don't know these people. You know, at the end of the day, it's about the music, but it gets so hard because it's like I was supposed to go to the Pink Friday tour with my sister, and she's like, I don't know if I want to go anymore. And I'm like, girl, no.
You ask your boyfriend, like, hey, boo.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if only we could give Nicki Minaj self-awareness, which also plays into imposter syndrome. It all full circle. It's all connected.
Yes, exactly.
Goodness gracious. Well, last question for you before we close things out. What are you currently in between? What in between are you navigating?
Man, right now, I would say that I'm actually navigating being in between. Do I pour into myself and allow myself to be able to have time off with vacation? Or do I think responsibly, focus on saving in 2024? That's been my biggest debate because my birthday's coming up next month. You know, I'm a Pisces, love Pisces down. And I was just like, okay, it's going to be my 28th birthday. And I oftentimes like don't prioritize myself when it comes to my birthday. I am like such a big like birthday person when it comes to the people in my life and my family. I'm like, let's go somewhere. Let's do something. Last year, I surprised my sister, balloons, the whole nine. Like I go above and beyond. But then when it comes to my birthday, I'm just like, actually cancel it. Forget it. I don't deserve anything.
Aw, goodness gracious.
Like, I don't know why I'm like that. Like, it's literally 0 to 100 so fast. But me and my boyfriend had like booked a room, and we're actually going to this like nice suite that has like a pool in the room and stuff like that.
Ooh.
But then I thought about it, and I'm like, I should probably be thinking economically. Like, groceries are expensive. I have bills. Like, I've got debt. Maybe I need to just be focused on that. But it's like, then I'm kind of in between where it's like, YOLO.
Yeah.
So I think navigating that when you're in your 20s and 30s is just so difficult because it's like you don't want to pass on experiences, because I know that like when I'm in my 50s and 60s, I want to look back on saying like, yes, I took that trip, yes, I booked that experience, but then at the same time I'm just like, but I have to, you know, make wise decisions for my financial security for the future.
Yeah.
So I oftentimes find myself like over contemplating that every single birthday, because I always feel like it's too much to try to spend that much money on splurging on myself for that day, when in reality it's like I don't even really do much else for the rest of the year, so why am I making it a big deal? But
yeah, treat yourself. Give yourself this day to celebrate you and feel special and embrace all of that and accept all of that magic, all the magic that is Kristen, and just treat yourself. Like, and treating yourself doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm gonna go buy 6 designer bags. I mean, I wish we had that kind of money. That'd be great. But you owe it. I mean, you've been working 2 jobs. Even technically one doesn't pay you yet. Like, you've still been working 2 jobs. You've been going hard since August. You owe it to yourself to take that time to treat yourself. Like, you've been working 2 jobs. 1 job that doesn't pay you. So, I'm talking about the podcasting in case you weren't picking up on that.
Yes.
So I support the Kristen, go spend a special night with your boyfriend and celebrate your birthday. And I was also thinking, like, when you said, I don't know why I'm not like this with mine, but I'm like this with everybody else's, it made me think about what you said about your grandma. And maybe you don't feel like you deserve to have that attention.
No, that's tea. No, yeah. That's tea. I never even thought about that. But that's so true.
Because I love giving, but like I get sometimes uncomfortable, like surprises for myself. Even though I do want them, but it's like if I get them, I'm like overwhelmed. And I'm like, I'm very uncomfortable, you know? So
right.
It's interesting. Something to think about.
Yeah. No, but you're totally right. Like, I deserve to be able to take that time. Like, I haven't really been doing I've been doing better financially, not making any rash decisions, because for a while, like, I was just going crazy, like, buying a bunch of stuff I didn't need. But it's like, I've truly, like, cleaned that up within the last 6 months. And I'm like, I really want to focus on, different things that matter, like contributing more to my 401k and, like, actually trying to be an adult, even though I don't feel like it. So I'm proud of myself for that. So I deserve to be able to, like, do what I want to do for my birthday. It makes sense. Yeah. It's my birthday.
All right, you better do it for your birthday.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, do something special. You deserve it.
Right.
I don't know, it just feels good. It feels good, and it's also, like, exciting to look forward to something too. I think that helps, like, kind of keep, especially when things, like, feel heavy or, like, stressful and overwhelming. It's like, well, at least I have this light at the end of the tunnel,
Exactly. So. Something to look forward to. So I'm officially going to make sure I put the PTO in tomorrow, because I literally decided this morning that, like, no, I'm gonna go through with it. It's booked.
Yes.
Why not go?
I love that. I love that energy. Yes. Well, I have seriously loved this episode. I've loved having you come on, Kristen. You are fabulous. You are wonderful. So tell all my listeners, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at A Little Bit of Lot Podcast. TikTok, that's the same, at A Little Bit of Lot Podcast. And on YouTube, I post my videos every Friday. So come hang.
Come hang with your girl, Kristen. She's a fellow light worker, a fellow lover of life and love and camaraderie. I know that sounded so lame, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
Camaraderie.
Like, peace, love, and light. That's what we're about.
I love it. Yes, ma'am. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to today's episode. I'll make sure to link all of Kristen's social media handles so you can follow her. If you're not doing so already, you can follow me at ElizabethCheney_ and at @InBetweenPod. And then on TikTok and YouTube, I am the In Between Podcast. So without further ado, I will catch you next week on an all new In Between. Bye.
Yes. Bye.